Hello, this is Mother Love Whispers. I hope everybody's doing okay. I thought I would just read a little bit this evening, and I really do hope that this finds you in a good place. Angel in a Different Pew. On Sunday mornings in church, Mary Ryerson loves the moment when the choir begins to sing and her young children settle into the pew by her side. I'm so blessed, she thinks, but once in a while her eyes search out an empty pew in the back, as if to look for the stranger who once sat there, a stranger who saved her family from unthinkable grief. Mary and her husband Lauren were overjoyed when she gave birth to little Michael in 1991. After 2 miscarriages, the couple finally had a little brother for their 9-year-old son, Lauren. He's perfect, Mary smiled as she held him for the first time. Yep, even if he did get that Ryerson head, her husband said, as they fit the blue stocking cap nurses gave them over Michael's head, which filled the cap completely. Just like you and Lauren, Mary grinned. She'd always had trouble finding hats big enough for her husband. Still, as Michael grew those first few weeks, his longish head nagged at her. He's doing great, her pediatrician said. Still, Mary noticed he spent extra time checking for the soft spot on Michael's head at his 3-month checkup. His head is big. I'd like you to take him in for x-rays to make sure it's developing normally, he frowned. Her heart pounding, Mary raced to the hospital, but hours later the radiologist told her everything's fine. Thank God, Mary cried, relief washing over her. Her worries were forgotten a few weeks later as she drove to church with 4-month-old Michael gurgling in his car seat as big brother Lauren dangled plastic keys to keep him amused. When they entered the church, Mary headed for the spot she'd always sat in, on the right side, in the second pew from the front. But she found herself pausing halfway, then noticing a seat in the back on the left-hand side. Why don't we sit back there, she asked. Lauren looked surprised. It was the first time in years they'd sat anywhere other than their usual seats, but he just shrugged and followed his mom to the back. As she settled the kids into the pew, Mary sensed someone staring at her. Looking up, she saw a man nearby looking intently at her. The congregation was small, but Mary had never seen him before. I wonder who he is, she thought, and smiled at him. Then, at the handshake of peace, when parishioners stand to shake hands with one another, the man reached right over others to shake her hand. Peace be with you, he said softly, holding on to her hand longer than was normal. He wants to say something, Mary realized, but the man hesitated, then let go and sat back down. When the service was over, Mary glanced at her watch. She was late for a Youth Week soccer meeting. She was hurrying out with the children when she heard a voice. "Excuse me," a man called. "May I speak with you?" Turning, Mary saw the man who'd been looking at her. "I don't want to intrude," he began, reaching out and gently touching Michael's head. Usually Michael was fussy with strangers, but with this man he just cooed. "Have you taken your baby to a doctor?" the man asked quietly. "Yes," Mary replied. "He's fine." "No, he's not," the man said gently. "He has sagittal cranial synostosis." "What?" Mary gasped. "It's a condition where the plates in the head prematurely fuse together," the man explained. "I suggest you consult a pediatric neurosurgeon immediately." But Mary stammered, "How do you know?" "I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon visiting from Ohio," the man replied. "Your son needs help." Mary's stomach fell. The doctor will explain everything, the man was saying, but you have to get there soon. By now, churchgoers were streaming out the door and all around them. Thank you, Mary managed to stammer before the man disappeared into the crowd. Alarmed, she called her pediatrician, who gave her the name of a doctor in Denver. But it's almost impossible, the name of a doctor in Denver, but it's almost impossible to get an appointment with him. You may have to wait, the pediatrician warned. But we can't wait, Mary thought, alarmed. And incredibly, she didn't have to. We just had a cancellation the call before you, the doctor's office told her when she phoned. In Denver, a pediatric neurosurgeon confirmed the stranger's diagnosis. The 4 plates in Michael's head had already fused together. There's no place for his brain to grow, the surgeon explained. Without surgery, Michael would become permanently brain damaged. Luckily, he's young, so his skull is still soft enough to operate on, the surgeon added. You brought him in just in time. Mary felt tingles go down her spine as she recalled the man in church. He knew, she realized, amazed. Oh, how I wish I had asked him his name. A few weeks later, Mary and Lauren watched as little Michael was prepped for surgery. A team of doctors would remove his skull, cut it into pieces, and reassemble it with wires, giving his brain room to grow. It was a terrifying prospect, but it was her baby's only hope. In the waiting room, the hours dragged on endlessly. Mary couldn't concentrate on the magazines. Exhausted, she couldn't sleep. At last, 8.5 hours later, it went beautifully, the surgeon announced. Michael's going to be just fine. Oh, thank you, Mary gasped through tears of joy. 4 days later, Michael was released. Though he had to wear a helmet for a year to protect his head, he healed completely. And as he grew, chasing butterflies in the garden, pleading for a popsicle at the sound of the ice cream truck, Mary could only watch and wonder. He's perfect, she thought. Today, when Mary watches 6-year-old Michael play street hockey or ride his bike with the neighborhood kids, she thinks about that fateful day in church when a stranger cared enough to stop. Who knows what Michael's life would be like if we had sat in our usual seats? She smiles. We might never have shaken hands with our guardian angel. I thought that was a real sweet story. Makes you think. I don't know about you guys, but I've had a lot of really wonderful things to happen, or really kind of to where I looked at it and realized it for what it was, and it meant so much. And sometimes when you're going through, stuff in life, just everyday life, I don't know, we forget to maybe examine little occurrences and realize, that it may be a sign of some sort. When I was 19, I had a Gran Torino. It was, I think it was from the 1970s, and it was back in the early 1980s. But anyway, it was 8 cylinders, so it went really fast and very easily. So I was late for work one day, and I was actually in a little store in Princeton, West Virginia. And in the town of Princeton itself, there are little shops, specialty shops and stuff. And so I had been looking at a dress, and I just got behind and looked, and I really needed to get to work. I worked at A&P. So I got in the car, pulled out, and they had these really almost like it was a little back street type thing, coming out to the main road. It was, kind of small. And in that area, there were no sidewalks in front of places. Can't really describe it except to say that I was peering out from like an alleyway in my car and looking to the left because I was waiting on the traffic to slow or whatever so that I could get out of there, and I was going to turn right. So, like I said, my car, I had a bad habit of, I would peel out, and that was what I planned on doing, getting out of there and getting to work on time. So I was looking toward the left, and somebody stopped for me. So I put my foot on the gas, and I was ready to go. But lo and behold, it was like all of a sudden I was in in a dream. It's weird because I realized I wasn't going anywhere. I was still looking toward the left. And then I looked up at the front of my car, and while I had been turned my head to the left, this little old lady had walked out of nowhere. I have no idea where she came from, but she was standing right in front of my car. And I sat there and looked at my foot, which was on the brake instead of on the gas, of course. And this voice came in my head, and it said, I saved you from this because I have a plan for you. And I just felt just the warmest feeling. And yes, it was a male voice, very comforting. And as I looked straight ahead, the lady was looking at me as though, I know what you just about did. Or maybe somebody was telling her, this could have been your last day on earth. And what's so bad too is that I was so in shock over what had just happened that I never did even get out of the car, go around, talk to her or anything. But God knows all about it because He's the one who arranged that specific encounter. And I'll never believe that it wasn't a very miraculous event in my life. And though, it didn't turn me into just a wonderful, giving, loving, whatever, I was still 19 and, but I never forget. I never get too far from Him. I never have. I go to Him when I need hope and help and a friend better than any. And I just wanted to share that with you all. And I pray for you all as we're all going through this time when we're looking up and getting our hope and our strength and our courage. Alrighty. Good night. And toodaloo and ta-ta. And God bless. I love y'all.